I can see where that energy comes from. I'm just going to leave that there. Yeah, I could have played an MLS only, but I'm out there to make good soccer decisions. Just play better. If you aren't playing to the standard that I hold you to, that I know you're capable of, then I'm going to give you a little heat. So I call at 7, and he goes, "Hey, yeah, actually, we're not going to take you. We'll see you in 2 weeks when we get back," and hangs up. On the other side of the ball, it's a hope. What? The Galaxy? Those guys have been treating me like dirt.
All right, really excited to be speaking with one of my favorite content creators and also one of the greatest defenders in USMNT history, Jimmy Conrad. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to get into the finer details of the U.S. men's national team and the World Cup and whatever else you want to talk about, Zach.
For sure, man. I wanted to start off by just congratulating you because you were, of course, the guy, or at least one of the 3 guys who broke the big scoop about Christian Pulisic. Let's dive on into it. We're going to get to your career later, but, Christian Pulisic, for the first time in his life, really, is starting to garner controversy amongst the American fan base after deciding to skip the Gold Cup. And you, of course, alongside Charlie Davies and Tony Meola, happened to interview him right after that for CBS. Where do you stand on his status? Do you think that this decision affects it at all?
Honestly, I really believe it depends on which lens you're looking through when you are looking at the situation. I can understand if there's something heavy going on in your life. That's really nobody else's business but your own. But if you wanted to share that with the coaching staff and you felt like that necessitated a little bit of a break, I can see where that energy comes from. I'm just going to leave that there. Where I think he really did himself a big disservice is when he posted on Instagram just what the doctor ordered. And it's photos of him playing golf, hanging out with his family and friends, which really feels counter to what Mauricio Pochettino had said. It just feels a little tone deaf. And in some ways, it feels like a little kid who's trying to spite the superior, you know what I mean? And to have a little attitude. I'm like, okay, so this is the thing. If you want to rest, then lay low and stay out of the public's eye. So if I'm a teammate of his, I'd be like, what? I don't understand. Why would you even do this, right? You're just poking the bear with this type of crap. And it's just unnecessary drama and energy. And so then obviously he comes on our show and he gets to explain himself a little bit. And I don't know if he moved the needle one way or the other. For the people that are already upset that he's not there, they're probably still going to remain upset and going to take bits and pieces of his conversation and his answers to then prove why they're even more upset about why he's not in. This is not where we wanted to be a year out from the World Cup. This is not the crap we wanted to be talking about. And the Gold Cup was a really, in my humble opinion, a great opportunity for the whole core group or all the players to be together for 30 plus days, which is going to be as similar to a World Cup as possible. And we're not going to get that opportunity. So, yeah, I'm a little disappointed that this whole thing's transpiring the way that it is.
We don't really have a proven dude in goal. And that was, of course, the issue with Zach Steffen a few years ago because he was like 4th choice goalkeeper at Man City and was not that good in the national team. So I'm curious, how do we, where do you stand on the relationship between MLS and U.S. soccer?
When I played in the 2006 World Cup, when we came home from that tournament, the 2 highest rated players for our team were Clint Dempsey and myself. We came home as the 2 highest rated players. At that point, Clint hadn't played in Europe. It was only MLS. And all the guys that were playing in Europe, they were the ones that were supposed to lead us to glory because they were playing in Europe. And the World Cup was in Germany, right? So this should be, something they're comfortable with, in an environment they should be comfortable with. And not to say those guys didn't play well, but what I learned in my own personal experience is that wherever you play before the game kicks off and wherever you're going to play afterwards, that's fine, but it doesn't matter. You're either ready when the ball kicks or you're not. And so, yeah, I could have played an MLS only, but I'm out there to make good soccer decisions. And so are all the other guys. And you're either locked in and ready to go or you're not. So there still gives me a bit of hope that when we, looking now to the 2026 World Cup, that all this noise and all the drama and all this unnecessary emotional energy that we're putting into the team, whether it's by creation of their own, right, or by the fan base, at some point, you just got to go out and play. Just play better. If you aren't playing to the standard that I hold you to, that I know you're capable of, then I'm going to give you a little heat. And if you don't want that heat, then just play better, right? So I always kind of fall back into it. Sounds so simple and so easy, right? Just play better. Like it's you can hit a switch. But some guys can hit that switch. And I feel like at that level, you should be able to hit that switch a little bit quicker because of the experiences that you've accrued over your career, which includes playing in Europe. You play in Europe, you have to learn how to hit that switch, I think, with a little bit more consistency. So maybe there's and frequency, which is where they maybe have an edge over the MLS guys who don't have to play or don't play as in maybe the same type of environment and cutthroat environment, though it still exists. Because I when I played in MLS, we'd lose 10 to 12 players every single year. Like the turnover was crazy, right? So there's still that cutthroat environment. But yeah, obviously the stakes are different, more eyeballs watching you over in Europe and so on and so forth. And the competition, arguably a little bit better at times. Not all the time, but at times. When I was coming through, dude, playing for the national team was it. There was no other, you could play, it didn't matter where you could play anywhere you wanted in Europe. But national team is the end game. That's where you're trying to get. And now it feels like it's shifted. And now the guys that play for big European clubs, those European clubs seem to have the preference over the national team.
You know, after failing to be drafted, you had an unsuccessful trial with the Galaxy. How important was this early rejection in terms of shaping the rest of your career? Obviously, I'm sure you'd rather have that rejection come at the start than at the end.
Sure, that's a great question. I don't get this one asked very often. So I kind of had some start stops with the Galaxy, and one particular story was I got told I was going to go to preseason. As I'm walking out of the Rose Bowl, Octavio Zambrano, the coach, is like, hey, actually, come into the office. And I was like, okay. I'm still, I'm buzzing. So I sit down. He's like, can you leave your bag of stuff here? We don't know yet if we're going to take you. And so Octavio, before I left, said, hey, we'll call you by 6 p.m. and let you know if you're in or you're out. And nothing. 6 o'clock comes and goes, and I'm sweating it. So at 7, I'm like, I'm going to call him. So I call at 7. And he goes, hey, yeah, actually, we're not going to take you. We'll see you in 2 weeks when we get back, and hangs up. And I was heartbroken. One, because I didn't obviously get to fulfill that dream. And second, it was more like, now what do I tell people? Yeah, you there's a moment where you have to go through the emotional process. You got to feel sorry for yourself. You got to work through that. But then, okay, once that comes and goes, what are you going to do about it? You're going to wake up the next day, and what are you going to do? Are you going to just moan and whine, or are you going to actually get up and try to get better than you were the next day? And to my credit, I did that. And when they got back, the Galaxy got back, I started training with them again, but I didn't feel the same type of energy. And so throughout that kind of conversation, I just ended up going down to the San Diego Flash, and it was the best decision I ever made. Honestly, Zach, I played 30 games in 6 months, and we played against Tijuana, Necaxa, Toluca. Like, they'd come up and play us in friendlies. And so and then they had some Mexican national team players. Like, okay, like these guys are good, and I want to be this good. And so you start to take notes on what makes them good. And a lot of it's just plain simple, right? They don't complicate the game. But it's nice to see it in person. So had I made MLS or Galaxy right away, I would have sat the bench and watched all these other guys play. So to actually go and cut my teeth, I was making $800 a month. I was training with the team in the morning. I trained by myself in the afternoon. I was sleeping on floors. I was eating ramen. Dude, my favorite every year as a professional, because I didn't know if I was going to make it or not, but I was giving it everything I possibly could. And then after that year happened, I get a call from Ivan Gazidis. He was the MLS deputy commissioner at that point. And he goes, yeah, he goes, hey, San Jose wants to pick you up as a discovery player and sign you. This is for $24,000 a year, by the way. Just throwing that out there. This is like MLS 1.0. And he goes, but the Galaxy just put a bid in for you as well. And I was like, what? The Galaxy? Those guys have been treating me like dirt for like forever. I couldn't acquiesce to these guys having, dictating how so I was like, no, I'm going to sign with San Jose. And I just took off from there. And I became a grown-ass man and just made plays and made the game easier for my teammates around me. And that was my gift. My gift is commitment, dude. That's my talent. My talent isn't traditional talent. So I leaned into that, and I'm a good communicator, and I just tried to continue to take steps. But yeah, I would really recommend to anybody, don't don't miss out on an opportunity to learn. And even if it feels like a step back on paper, it could be the best thing that ever happened to you, just like it was for me when I went to San Diego.
You, on the other hand, you've remained front and center with soccer, and part of that has been working with the San Francisco Glens, and getting to work in kind of a multifaceted role. What was it like getting the chance to view soccer from the other side and working in more of a front office role?
Yeah, it's great. I really, my main impetus for working with the Glens was to see the game from that level. I'd had the benefit of seeing the game from the national team level and MLS for many years. And not to say that you completely lose touch with that lower level grassroots soccer, but you are, there is a distance that's been created, right? And you're a little bit of in a bubble as you start to get higher and higher up the food chain. So when I had come to San Francisco after my time in New York doing media stuff, I interviewed those guys on this my man on the street being sports stuff that I was doing. And they said, "Hey, you should come to a game." And I was like, "I'd rather just coach with you guys." And they're like, "Are you serious?" And so then they just didn't, I'm a bit of a, at times some of my stuff can be a bit of a cartoon character or caricature. And so I sat down with them and they were really blown away with my passion for the game, my knowledge of the game, how much I wanted to give back. And so we found a role that kind of ticked those boxes so that we could both mutually benefit from that. And to be able to see the game from like a USL League 2 level, to see it from now an MLS next level, and to see the fires they have to put out, the obstacles in their way, and now you can kind of extrapolate that out to probably what happens with all the clubs, all the headaches they have to go through and endure to try to make sure that they are best positioned to develop players, move those players along in a meaningful way. Where are you going to move those players? Do you even want to lose those players? Because, that's going to impact your club if you don't have, if all your top players are immediately leaving, before you even get them. So yeah, a lot of stuff that I got to learn, and it's made me, for me, a lot more well-rounded in my approach to the game and to what I'm going to do, I think, as I get into kind of this next phase of leaving media and into coaching.
For sure. And, in terms of your media career, I personally, I vaguely remember you playing for the national team. I was a bit young then, but I definitely have watched a lot of your streams on YouTube and Twitch, a lot of your commentary for CBS and whatnot. The next 5 years or so are going to be you moving away from a media capacity and trying to make something of yourself in this coaching industry. Is that right?
Yeah, I think there's a blend there. I have aspirations, obviously, to be involved in the 2026 World Cup. I've worked with Fox Sports for their last 3 tentpole events, and I have an incredible relationship with CBS Sports. So to have these tentpole events with Fox, and so I'm excited to be potentially being involved with Fox for 2026. And so I don't want to miss out on how special that's going to be able to host a World Cup here, especially when it expands to 48 teams. And yeah, I assume it's going to be a real fun circus, because obviously the political climate could make it a little bit more difficult than it should be. But we'll hopefully that gets softened as it starts to approach. The plan is to hopefully get involved in the Glens Academy in some capacity, so I'm still getting reps. I'm trying to get an MLS next team and continuing to move up the ladder. I'm slated to get my UEFA A. I'm in my UEFA B. I'll get my UEFA A in 2026. And then we'll kind of see where things stand in terms of opportunities and maybe getting the UEFA A Pro, but you need to be coaching at a pretty high level to get the A Pro. So I might have to hold off on that for a bit, which is fine. But it just puts me, even with UEFA A, it puts me in a good position to tackle some other jobs. And then when my youngest is out of high school, so 4 years, then we can maybe start to look bigger and more global. But ultimately, my heart is in giving back to the game here in the States and trying to help elevate what's happening here. And I'm looking forward to diving into that and finding what fits best for me so I can have maximum impact.
This 2-year spell is probably the most important chapter in the history of United States soccer. Last summer, we hosted the Copa America. This summer, we're hosting the Gold Cup and the Club World Cup. Next summer, of course, the World Cup. But talking a little bit about the Club World Cup, obviously, it's the first of its kind. A lot of big teams going up, and right now, just in a few hours, we're going to have the opening match between Inter Miami and Al Ahly. I'm curious, as somebody who watches a lot of MLS, what's your take on Inter Miami's situation right now?
Yeah, I think that they are victims of, honestly, their own success. They've had success, of course, but kind of victims of their philosophy, because they're trying to be the Galacticos of MLS in some ways. And there's a sacrifice. When you have a salary capped league, there's a sacrifice to that philosophy. So you can go out and get the biggest names. You can get Messi, who's been tremendous, and you can get all of his buddies too. But then something's going to give. If this wasn't a salary capped league, then I think that could probably work and be a little bit more consistent. They could go out and get big names defensively, but right now they're. So here's a distinction, and something I talk about actually when I coach. Inter Miami has players that they know will score goals. Right? They got Messi, they got Suarez, they've got some other guys. They have enough going forward where they know they're going to score. There's a knowing there. On the other side of the ball, it's a hope. They hope these guys are going to be good defenders, right? And that's where there's a little bit of an imbalance in the team. They also hope that Javier Mascherano is going to be a good coach. There's some signs that he's obviously got some chops, but when things get real tough, that's when you're going to find out. And I don't know if we know enough about Javier Mascherano yet to know how good of a coach he's going to be. They have to win this first game against Al Ahly, because I don't think Porto and Palmeiras are going to be. There's no teams in this that are going to be slouches for sure. Seattle's got no chance. You got PSG, Atletico, and Botafogo. So thanks for coming. Enjoy those three. And then LAFC, I think they got a decent chance. I mean, they start with Chelsea, but then, again, there's no easy games, but there's something about LAFC. They like to counterattack anyway, and obviously got Bouanga, who's very good in those situations. So they're kind of built a little bit for this competition. So I think they have probably the best chance to go the farthest. But I'm excited MLS teams are part of the conversation. I still marvel that the FIFA Club World Cup is here. Like, we have our own. Like, whatever you think about the Gold Cup, it's still our continental competition. Right. So he would. I say Johnny Infantino would never go down to South America and do a FIFA Club World Cup when the Copa America is going. He would never go into Europe and say, hey, we're doing the FIFA Club World Cup here. And by the way, it's in the middle of the Euros. There's no chance. I don't even know if he would do it for the African Cup of Nations. Like, maybe he has before. So the lack of respect, I think, for certain continents kind of pisses me off. And obviously, I feel like they're trying to fleece the American consumer as well, ticket prices and all that. So that's a big conversation there. But then when I cut all that aside, sporting wise, I'm like, wow, this is pretty crazy. And the bonus money for these teams is crazy too. So it should be a pretty entertaining competition, but I don't think it was necessarily necessary in this particular moment. But this is what I think Infantino is going to kind of. The World Cup is the World Cup, right? It's always going to do what it's going to do. But he wanted to put a stamp on things, and having an expanded FIFA Club World Cup is one of those initiatives. So from a sporting perspective, pretty awesome. But for everything else, I'm like, God, man, I don't know. It's just like FIFA kind of encroaching on CONCACAF space and trying to fleece the American consumer, which I'm not a big fan of either.
It is kind of annoying how the Gold Cup is becoming even more irrelevant with
yeah.
But you touched up on it a little bit. And, I think it is important to note that the current state of this country, it's on a knife's edge. There's so much tension. There's so much violence. Are you concerned that this current political landscape is going to affect the way that we can, the way that perhaps the impact of the Club World Cup and the World Cup the next few years?
I'm curious. Yeah, it's going to be up to us. As decision makers, and I don't know if I'm not a policy maker, right? But there are going to be some interesting situations. Let's say if certain countries qualify for the World Cup, how are you going to manage those? those countries. How are you going to manage their fans that come in? I mean, if our current, political leaders have beef against one of these countries, then what does that look like? Which would be really disappointing and sad, because what I love about the World Cup is how much it brings people together in a really positive way. I feel like we made a joke, I don't know if it's a joke, but even like a reality that even the most hardcore gangster terrorists, whatever you want to call them, right? Whatever you want to designate them, even they will put down their guns and want to watch the World Cup. Like, everything just stops, right? I mean, it's like you just put that stuff aside and you just want to enjoy, the best players doing their thing on the biggest stage. I think everybody can relate to that and tap into that and be kind of proud of where they're from and wearing the jersey and getting into it without having to be assholes about it or being divisive or we're smarter than you or we're better than you. Like, yeah, we just kind of do it on the fields, and it's such a special environment. And for anybody that hasn't been to a World Cup, and if you live in the States, it's going to be probably pretty impossible to get tickets.
Yeah.
But I actually think you're going to benefit a lot more from going to fan zones and going to watch the game on a big giant screen, and you're just in the middle of it, like a music festival, man. You're like, that actually might even be a better environment than going in stadium, and will be a cheaper experience for sure. But I had the opportunity in '94 when we hosted the World Cup. I was in high school, and we couldn't afford tickets, even though we lived like 15 minutes from the Rose Bowl. Like, we couldn't do it. But I would go into Old Town Pasadena, which is a little area right outside the Rose Bowl, and I just soaked up the culture. Like, I just was drawn to it. Like, wow. I mean, imagine a game having this type of impact on people's lives. Like, they're so excited to be Italian, or they're so excited to be Brazilian, and they're so proud to be Argentinian, but it's not in a way there's any malice or any ill will, or it's just like, this is where I'm from and I love it. And I love these guys are representing me, and I hope they play well. And if they don't, doesn't matter. We're going to have a party. I mean, yeah, I'll be pissed, but we're still going to have a party anyway, And so the essence of that, and I just worry that politics could impact that in a negative way, and that bums me out, because it's such a great opportunity to showcase what makes all these countries special, and then it's up to America and the other host countries to embrace that and not to push it away, right? So I hope that it's, when it comes around, the energy is stoked with being inclusive and welcome, as opposed to everybody being treated like, well, they're from this country, they're monsters, or whatever the going feeling is. So we have 12 months to get that shaped up, and I'm honestly hoping for the best, because it'd be a real disservice to the competition itself and what it stands for, and also for us as hosts if we couldn't meet people where they are with all this incredible energy. But I'm telling you, go to fan zones, because you're going to live it and breathe it in a way that makes it super special, and I promise you it'll change your life in a positive way.
With just 1 year to go, how are we feeling about the current state of the U.S. men's national team? Obviously, a lot of key players are not going to be involved in the Gold Cup, but how, on a scale from 1 to 10, what's your level of optimism as far as the U.S. goes? Yeah,
I would say the current climate, I'm disappointed. Yeah. We didn't look good in the Nations League. I mean, we could even go back to Copa America. We had an opportunity to build some momentum, and Christian Pulisic came on our podcast, and he wasn't wrong. We played well against Bolivia in game 1. We had the 1-0 lead despite a red card against Panama. We didn't manage that game well. We lose that one 2-1, and then we run into Uruguay in game 3, and I didn't think we performed poorly. We had 1 or 2 chances that maybe could have changed the outcome and maybe got us through to the next round. It didn't happen. So I wasn't, maybe a couple of different things could have happened, but I agreed with him ultimately that it wasn't this we're the worst team ever type feeling that I think people took away from it. It just was an opportunity to build some momentum, and we missed that opportunity. So then you get Mauricio Pochettino in, and he starts off 5 wins out of 6, and then we get into the Nations League, and we were poor. We lose to Panama, and it's really the Panama game. it's just unfortunate because had we scored, we had enough opportunities to score. We didn't take those, right? And goals change games and change your mood about games.
Yeah.
And then they get their one chance and they score and they go through, and that's that. And then against Canada, I think that's where I really personally wanted to see a reaction, a positive reaction. And Canada just stuck it to us, and we lost that one. So now another missed opportunity to gain some momentum. So then you're like, okay, you get into these friendlies, and now you're changing the team, and now some players are coming off, and they want to get. And so now it's just like, I'm just disappointed that this is where we are. And I had said early on when Mauricio Pochettino took over that the Gold Cup was going to be the time for him to really implement how he wanted the team to play, because you had the most time to do it, right? You had the 2 friendlies leading right into the Gold Cup. So you had 2 games and then a week, and now you're into probably another 25 days. I mean, that is as good an amount of time to work with the group as possible. And we don't have most of our core players aren't there. For me, another big missed opportunity. We lose those 2 friendlies, and we had some moments in the Turkey game, so you can build off of some positivity there, and I'm happy to do that. As you know, I'm very positive. But the next game against Switzerland, there's not a lot of positives there. We didn't look good, and so now, okay, you want to see a reaction against Trinidad, in the first game of the Gold Cup, but it's this opportunity to build some momentum. So as much as I would say, I'd be thrilled if we won every game 5-0, by the way, because you're starting to create a winning culture and winning mentality and how Mauricio Pochettino wants to play. And he's starting to look for the player profiles that's going to fit into the puzzle that he's building. And so it's going to be really important. It's still valuable for us, but I feel like it's a missed opportunity to get everybody together to get on the same page. But there's a couple dominoes that have to fall that we are incapable of or we're in control of, that have to make that happen, and winning that first game is important. So I just don't know where we're going to get that momentum right now, and it might just, I now have to accept, as a fan and as an analyst and as a former player, that momentum might not start until that first game of the tournament, and that is a lot of goddamn pressure on these guys to have to try to figure. They're going to have to win that one no matter what, but it would be nice to have some ton of confidence going into that, as opposed to which version of this team is going to show up. And so that's where I am. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for your time.
No problem.
Blast, and hopefully we can do another follow-up before the World Cup next year.
That'd be great. We'll see where my temperature is at that point.